February 9th, 2004, 7:27 p.m. A vehicle crashes into a snowbank on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A witness calls 911. Within minutes, a school bus driver stops to offer help. The driver of the crashed vehicle, a young woman, declines assistance and says she's already called the OAA. The bus driver leaves. 7 minutes later, police arrive. The vehicle is there, keys in the ignition, some belongings scattered inside, but the driver is gone. For 21 years, Maura Murray's disappearance has remained one of America's most analyzed unsolved cases. Thousands of hours of investigation, massive search efforts covering hundreds of square miles of New Hampshire wilderness, countless theories debated online by amateur sleuths and professional investigators, documentaries, podcasts, books, and yet no definitive answers. The case went cold not for lack of attention, but because critical evidence was never properly analyzed with the technology available even at the time, much less with modern forensic capabilities. Cell phone records exist from the hours before Maura's disappearance. Her phone communicated with cell towers. Those communications created a digital record. That record was collected in 2004. It was looked at, it was considered, but it was never properly analyzed using the kind of advanced cell tower triangulation and coverage mapping that's now standard in criminal investigations. In 2004, cell tower analysis was primitive. Investigators could see which tower a phone connected to, but interpreting what that meant in terms of actual location was imprecise. The tools to map coverage areas, to triangulate positions using multiple towers, to calculate probability zones where a phone must have been based on signal strength. Those tools existed but weren't widely used in local investigations. And critically, they weren't applied comprehensively to this case. For 21 years, that cell tower data has sat in case files. It's been discussed. Amateur investigators have tried to interpret it. But it's never been fully analyzed by professional forensic cell tower experts using modern mapping technology, modern coverage analysis, and modern understanding of how 2004-era cell networks actually functioned. Until now. In recent years, there's been renewed focus on properly analyzing the cell tower data from this case. Professional analysts with experience in cell tower forensics are finally looking at the data that's been available since 2004, but was never properly interpreted. And what they're finding contradicts some of the assumptions that have driven this investigation for 2 decades. The cell tower data doesn't definitively solve this case, but it narrows down where Maura was in the hours before she disappeared. It eliminates some theories. It supports others. It provides information that could have focused the investigation differently from the beginning if it had been properly analyzed 21 years ago. This case has been cold for 21 years, but the data that could help solve it has existed the entire time. It just needed someone to analyze it properly, and in 2025 that's finally happening. Before we go any further, I need to know something. Where are you watching from right now? Seriously, drop your location in the comments. Are you in New Hampshire, somewhere else in the United States, another country? I want to see how far this story is reaching. How many people are still paying attention to a case that's been cold for more than 2 decades? And if you believe that cases like this can still be solved, that 21-year-old evidence can yield new insights when properly analyzed, that families deserve answers even after decades of waiting, you need to subscribe to Cold Case right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single update, and smash that like button because it pushes this story to more people who need to hear it. We specialize in cases that law enforcement forgot, cases that went cold, cases where families have been waiting years or decades for answers. We dig into the evidence, we follow the technology, we track the breakthroughs that could finally bring resolution. This case has been cold for 21 years. But evidence that's been sitting in files since 2004 is finally being properly analyzed. Analysis that could narrow down search areas, eliminate false theories, and potentially lead to answers after more than 2 decades. Now, Let's dive into exactly what cell tower data exists from February 9, 2004, why it was never properly analyzed, and what modern analysis is revealing. When Maura Murray left the University of Massachusetts Amherst on February 9, 2004, she took her cell phone with her. That phone was a basic 2004-era mobile phone. No smartphone capabilities, no GPS, just voice calls and text messages. But critically, even basic cell phones in 2004 constantly communicated with nearby cell towers, and those communications created records. Cell phone networks function by dividing coverage areas into cells, each served by a tower. When a phone is turned on, it registers with the nearest tower. As the phone moves, it hands off to different towers. Every call, every text, every registration event creates a record showing which tower the phone connected to and when. In the hours before Maura disappeared, her phone created several of these records. The exact details have never been fully released to the public, but it's known that her phone communicated with towers during her drive from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. The last known communication was before the crash, though the exact timing and tower location have been subjects of debate. When investigators obtained these cell tower records in 2004, they looked at them. They noted which towers the phone had connected to. They made some general observations about where Maura must have been based on tower locations. But they didn't conduct comprehensive forensic analysis of what those tower connections actually meant in terms of precise location. Let me break down what that means and why proper cell tower analysis is so different from just looking at which tower a phone connected to. Cell towers don't have perfectly circular coverage areas. Coverage is affected by terrain, by the height and power of the tower, by the direction of antennas, by buildings and foliage, by weather conditions, by how many other phones are using the network. A tower might provide strong coverage for several miles in one direction, but barely reach half a mile in another direction where there's a mountain blocking the signal. In 2004, the tools to map these complex coverage patterns weren't widely available to local investigators. RF engineers working for cell phone companies had sophisticated models of coverage areas, but those models weren't routinely shared with law enforcement. Investigators working a missing persons case in rural New Hampshire in 2004 would have had access to tower locations, but not to detailed coverage maps. This meant that when investigators saw Maura's phone had connected to a particular tower, they could estimate she was somewhere within a few miles of that tower, but they couldn't narrow it down more precisely than that. And critically, they couldn't definitively rule out areas where she might have been that were outside the obvious coverage area, but could still have connected to that tower under certain conditions. Modern cell tower analysis is far more sophisticated. Forensic experts can obtain the actual coverage models used by cell phone carriers in 2004. They can factor in terrain data, tower specifications, antenna patterns, and network load to determine not just where a phone could have been, but where it most likely was based on which tower it connected to and the signal strength recorded. They can also analyze the sequence of tower connections to determine direction and speed of travel. If a phone connects to Tower A, then Tower B, then Tower C in quick succession, that tells you the phone was moving and in which direction. The timing between connections can help estimate speed of travel, and critically, they can identify anomalies. If a phone that's been traveling steadily suddenly connects to a tower that doesn't make sense based on the direction of travel, that's significant. It might indicate the phone was turned off and back on, or that something unusual happened with the network. All of this analysis was theoretically possible in 2004 using the data that existed, but it required specialized expertise, access to carrier coverage data, and sophisticated analysis tools. Local investigators working the case in 2004 didn't have those resources readily available. The cell tower data was collected, noted, but not properly analyzed. For 21 years, that data has sat largely uninterpreted, until recently when forensic cell tower experts have finally begun properly analyzing it. Quick question before we continue. What time is it where you are right now? Let us know in the comments. I'm curious how many of you are watching this late at night, thinking about how a proper analysis 21 years ago might have changed this investigation. How many are watching during your day? Drop the time in the comments. Now let's talk about what modern analysis of the 2004 cell tower data is revealing and why it matters for understanding what happened. The most significant finding from modern cell tower analysis is about location constraints. By properly mapping the coverage areas of the towers that Maura's phone connected to, analysts can definitively eliminate some locations and identify others as most probable. This is crucial because the search for Maura has covered hundreds of square miles of wilderness. Resources are finite. Search teams can't possibly cover every inch of territory. They have to prioritize areas based on probability. And for 21 years, those probability assessments have been based on incomplete analysis of the cell tower data. Proper analysis can narrow the search area significantly. If the cell tower data shows Maura's phone was in a specific corridor or zone in the hours before she disappeared, searchers can focus intensive efforts there rather than spreading resources across vast territories. Additionally, cell tower analysis can help establish timeline. If the phone data shows Maura was in location A at time X, location B at time Y, that constrains theories about what happened. Theories that require her to have been in location C at time Y can be eliminated if the phone data shows that wasn't physically possible. The analysis also addresses questions about whether Maura continued traveling after the crash. This has been one of the central debates in the case. Did she leave the crash site on foot and get lost in the wilderness? Did someone pick her up? Did she have a plan to meet someone? The cell phone data provides some constraints on these possibilities. If the phone was turned off or lost signal at a specific location and never reconnected, that tells you something. Modern analysis can determine whether the last tower connection is consistent with the crash site location or whether it suggests the phone was somewhere else when it lost connectivity. There's also analysis of calls and messages in the hours before the disappearance. Who did Maura communicate with? What was the timing and duration of those communications? Modern analysis can map those communications geographically, showing where Maura was when she made each call or sent each message. This creates a movement timeline that can be compared against other evidence. The forensic experts conducting this modern analysis have been careful to note that cell tower data from 2004 isn't as precise as GPS data or modern cell phone tracking. There are margins of error. There are areas of ambiguity. But even with those limitations, proper analysis provides significantly more information than was extracted from the data 21 years ago. One of the most important contributions of modern analysis is eliminating false theories. For 21 years, various theories have circulated about where Maura went, how far she could have traveled, whether she was in location X or location Y. Some of those theories are inconsistent with what the cell tower data actually shows. Proper analysis can definitively rule out scenarios that don't match the evidence. This doesn't solve the case by itself, but it narrows the possibilities. It helps investigators and search teams focus on scenarios that are actually supported by the evidence rather than chasing theories that sound plausible but are contradicted by the cell tower data. If you're finding this information valuable, if you're learning about how 21-year-old cell tower data can be properly analyzed in 2025 to provide insights that weren't available in 2004, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button. Seriously, I know it seems like a small thing, but it makes a massive difference. YouTube's algorithm pushes content based on engagement, and every like tells the platform that this story matters, that people still care about finding answers 21 years later. Your engagement helps keep this case in public awareness. It puts pressure on investigators to use every available tool, including proper analysis of evidence that's been sitting in files for decades. So hit that like button, drop a comment, share this video with someone who follows this case and needs to understand that evidence from 21 years ago can still yield new insights when properly analyzed. Now, let's talk about the specific areas where modern cell tower analysis is providing new information that could help solve this case. The first area is the route Maura took from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. The cell tower data from her drive shows which towers her phone connected to as she traveled north. Modern analysis can map this route with far more precision than was done in 2004. This matters because understanding exactly which route Maura took helps establish her state of mind and potential destination. Was she heading to a specific location? Was she following a planned route or driving randomly? The cell tower data provides objective evidence about this. Modern analysis has confirmed some assumptions about Maura's route while challenging others. The data supports that she took certain highways, connected through certain areas, but it also shows that some theories about detours or stops she might have made are not supported by the tower connections. Her phone moves steadily along a particular corridor, connecting to towers in a sequence that indicates direct travel without significant deviations. Second, there's the question of stops or pauses during the drive. If Maura stopped somewhere for more than a few minutes, her phone would have maintained connection to the same tower for that duration. Modern analysis can identify these pauses in the tower connection sequence. This is significant because if Maura stopped to meet someone, to get something, to check a location, that stop would be visible in the cell tower data. The absence of unexpected stops supports theories that she drove directly to the area where she crashed without deviating to meet anyone or check any locations. Third, there's the critical question of where Maura was when her phone last communicated with the network. This is perhaps the most important piece of information the cell tower data can provide. If the last tower connection can be precisely mapped, it provides a starting point for search efforts and constrains theories about what happened next. Modern analysis uses terrain mapping, coverage modeling, and signal propagation analysis to determine where the phone most likely was when it made its last connection. This isn't a single point. It's a probability zone. But that zone is much smaller than the crude estimates made in 2004. Fourth, there's analysis of incoming calls and messages. If someone tried to call Maura after she disappeared, the network would have attempted to deliver that call by pinging towers in the area where the phone was last registered. The tower that responded to those pings provides information about where the network thought the phone was. This can be different from where the phone actually was, but it provides additional data points. If the phone was turned off at location A, but the network was still trying to reach it through towers near location B, that tells you something about network behavior and helps refine location estimates. Fifth, there's the question of whether the phone was ever turned back on after the initial disappearance. If someone found Maura's phone and turned it on at any point in the days or weeks after she disappeared, it would have registered with a tower. That registration would be in the records. Modern analysis has confirmed whether such registrations exist. This addresses theories about whether Maura's phone was taken by someone else, whether it was destroyed immediately, or whether it remained off permanently after the disappearance. The absence of any registrations after the disappearance provides important information about what likely happened to the phone. Beyond the cell tower data itself, modern analysis also looks at what's missing from the data. Are there expected records that don't exist? Are there gaps in the data that suggest unusual network behavior or phone behavior? For example, if a phone was traveling through an area and suddenly stopped communicating with towers, but should have maintained connectivity based on coverage maps, that's significant. It might indicate the phone was turned off deliberately, the battery died, or it was damaged. Each of these possibilities has different implications for what happened to Maura. Before we wrap this up, I want to know something. Do you follow other cases where old cell tower data could be properly analyzed with modern techniques? Cases from the early 2000s where phones created records that were never properly interpreted? Drop the case name in the comments. I'm curious what other investigations could benefit from this kind of analysis. Now, let's piece together what all of this means for the possibility of solving this case and what happens next. This case has been cold for 21 years. The investigation has pursued numerous theories, followed countless leads, and searched vast areas of wilderness. Some progress has been made, some theories have been eliminated, but definitive answers remain elusive. The proper analysis of cell tower data doesn't solve the case by itself, but it provides crucial constraints on what's possible. It narrows search areas. It eliminates inconsistent theories. It provides objective evidence about where Maura was and when in the hours before she disappeared. This information is most valuable when combined with other evidence. Physical evidence from the crash site, witness statements, financial records. The cell tower analysis fills in gaps, corroborates some information, and contradicts other assumptions. One of the most important contributions of this analysis is helping prioritize search efforts. For 21 years, searches have been conducted based on various theories about where Maura might have gone. Some search areas have been selected based on speculation, hunches, or theories that sound plausible, but aren't necessarily supported by hard evidence. Cell tower analysis provides hard evidence. If the data shows Maura's phone was in Zone A and not in Zone B, resources should focus on Zone A. This seems obvious, but for 21 years, comprehensive searches haven't been properly guided by forensic analysis of the cell tower data because that analysis was never completed. Modern analysis also helps investigators evaluate witness statements and other evidence. If a witness claims to have seen Maura at location X at time Y, but the cell tower data shows her phone was at location Z at that time, that tells you something about the reliability of that witness or the accuracy of their recollection. The analysis doesn't make all witnesses wrong or all theories invalid, but it provides an objective framework for evaluating information. This is crucial in a case that's been analyzed by thousands of people online, where theories proliferate, where every detail has been debated endlessly. Objective evidence helps separate what's possible from what's speculation. What happens next depends on what the full analysis reveals, and whether investigators use that information to guide new search efforts or investigative approaches. The family has been advocating for years for comprehensive forensic analysis of all available evidence, including proper cell tower analysis. That analysis is now finally being completed by qualified experts. If the analysis narrows down a search area significantly, it could lead to renewed ground searches in specific locations. If it eliminates certain theories definitively, it could refocus investigative resources on scenarios that are actually consistent with the evidence. If it identifies new questions or anomalies that weren't apparent before, it could open new investigative avenues. After 21 years, progress in this case won't come from wild new theories or dramatic breakthroughs. It will come from methodically analyzing the evidence that's existed all along but was never properly examined. The cell tower data is one piece of that evidence, and it's finally getting the analysis it should have received in 2004. This case has been cold for 21 years, but it's not unsolvable. Evidence exists. That evidence can be analyzed properly with modern tools and expertise. And that analysis can provide answers that narrow the possibilities, focus the investigation, and potentially lead to resolution. Maura Murray deserves to be found. Her family deserves answers. And the case deserves to be investigated with every tool available, including proper forensic analysis of evidence that's been sitting in files for more than 2 decades. If you haven't subscribed to Cold Case yet, what are you waiting for? We cover cases just like this one. Cases that went cold because critical evidence was never properly analyzed. Cases where modern technology and expertise can extract information from decades-old evidence. And you don't want to miss updates on this case or the dozens of others we're tracking. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you're alerted when there are developments in this case or when we cover other cold cases being advanced through proper analysis of old evidence. This case has been cold for 21 years, but modern analysis of 2004 data could finally provide the breakthroughs needed. Subscribe now and be here for those updates. We've covered a lot of ground in this investigation. 21 years since Maura Murray disappeared. Cell tower data that's existed since 2004, but was never properly analyzed. Modern forensic experts finally applying sophisticated analysis techniques to that old data. And findings that could narrow search areas, eliminate false theories, and potentially lead to answers after more than 2 decades. This case represents a common problem in cold case investigations. Evidence exists. It was collected at the time, but it wasn't analyzed properly, either because the technology wasn't available, the expertise wasn't accessible, or resources weren't allocated for comprehensive analysis. The evidence sat in files for years or decades while the case went cold. But evidence doesn't expire. Cell tower data from 2004 is just as valid in 2025 as it was 21 years ago. It just needs to be analyzed properly. And proper analysis requires specialized expertise, modern tools, and comprehensive methodology that wasn't applied to this case when the evidence was first collected. Maura deserves every effort to find her. Her family has waited 21 years for answers. They've endured decades of uncertainty, speculation, and theories that may or may not be grounded in actual evidence. They deserve to have the evidence that exists analyzed properly so they can know what really happened. The cell tower data won't answer every question, but it answers some questions. It narrows possibilities. It provides constraints on theories. It helps focus investigative resources on scenarios that are actually consistent with objective evidence, rather than speculation. After 21 years, this case could still be solved. Not through dramatic new revelations, but through methodical, professional analysis of evidence that's existed all along. The cell tower data is one piece. There are others. Financial records, physical evidence from the crash site, witness statements. All of this evidence can be re-examined with modern analytical techniques. This case went cold because critical analyses weren't completed. It can be warmed up again by completing those analyses properly. And in 2025, that's finally happening with the cell tower data. The wait has been 21 years. But families of missing persons wait decades for answers all the time. And sometimes, those answers finally come when someone takes the time to properly analyze evidence that was collected years ago, but never fully examined. If this case moved you, if you believe that 21-year-old evidence deserves proper analysis, if you think families waiting for decades deserve every possible effort to find answers, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Cold Case. We're tracking this case and the analysis being conducted on the cell tower data. When that analysis produces findings that could advance the investigation, when search areas are identified, when theories are eliminated or supported, you'll know about it if you're subscribed. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Do you think proper analysis of the cell tower data will finally provide the breakthrough this case needs? What other evidence from 2004 should be reanalyzed with modern techniques? Share this video with anyone who follows this case and needs to understand that evidence from 21 years ago can still yield crucial information when properly analyzed by qualified experts. 21 years. The evidence has been waiting. Technology and expertise have advanced. And now, proper analysis is finally being applied to data that should have been thoroughly examined in 2004. It's not too late for answers. It's never too late when evidence exists and families are still waiting.